Analysing stocks is the first part of the process on whether a company is worth investing in. In this video, we will talk about how to analyse a stock in 5 minutes using 5 simple steps. Step 1. Do you understand what the company does? Each of us, through experience or study, has built up useful knowledge on certain areas of the world. Some areas are understood by most of us, while some areas require a lot more specialty to evaluate. Here's Buffett in his own words. You don't have to be an expert on every company or even many. You only have to be able to evaluate companies within your circle of competence. The size of that circle is not very important. Knowing its boundaries, however, is vital. And Peter Lynch has said, the worst thing you can do is invest in companies that you know nothing about. Unfortunately, buying stocks on ignorance is still a popular American pastime. Step 2. Is the company profitable? It is important to invest in companies with high margins. We want our gross profit margin to be greater than 40% and the net profit margin to be greater than 10%. The formula for gross profit margin is equal to the revenue minus the cost of goods sold divided by revenue. Let's do an example. Apple's gross profit margin for 2023 was 44%, and using the formula as outlined, it can be calculated as follows. We have a revenue of $383 billion minus the cost of goods sold, which is $214 billion, divided by the revenue being $383 times 100 equals 44%. This means that for every dollar Apple generated in sales, the company generated 44 cents in gross profit before other business expenses were paid. A higher ratio is usually preferred, as this would indicate that the company is selling inventory for a higher profit. Gross profit margin provides a general indication of a company's profitability, but it is not a precise measurement. Net profit margin is equal to net income divided by revenue. Apple's net profit margin for 2023 was 25%, and using the formula as outlined, we can calculate it as follows. $97 billion, which was our net income, divided by $383 billion, which was our revenue, and then times that by 100 equals 25%. A 25% net profit margin indicates that for every dollar generated by Apple in sales, the company kept 25 cents as profit. A higher profit margin is always desirable, since it means the company generates more profits from its sales. Step 3. How well does the company allocate capital? Return on invested capital assesses a company's efficiency in allocating capital to profitable investments. It is calculated by dividing net operating profit after tax, or NOPAT, by invested capital. Return on invested capital gives a sense of how well a company is using its capital to generate profits. When a company has a return on invested capital of 10%, it means that for every $100 in capital the company has on its balance sheet, $10 in NOPAT is generated. You want to invest in companies with a high return on invested capital, as this means that the company is allocating capital effectively and efficiently. As a rule of thumb, the return on invested capital should be higher than 10% and preferably higher than 15%. A consistent and high return on invested capital is a great indication that the company has a sustainable competitive advantage. By only focusing on companies with a high return on invested capital when picking stocks, you already exclude a lot of value traps. A high and consistent return on invested capital is the result of a sustainable competitive advantage. Why is this? Well, it's because the competitors and potential new entrants are not able to go into competition with this company. This allows them to stay very profitable and operate at attractive margins. Step 4. Is the company growing? In the long term, stock prices always follow the evolution of the intrinsic value. That's why earnings growth is so important for investors. The more earnings growth a company can report, the more the value of the company increases. That's why in the long term, stock prices tend to follow earnings growth. And we want revenue growth to be above 10%, and earnings per share growth to be above 10% as well. Step number 5. Are you paying too much? In this situation, we should be able to compare the company's value to its 5-year PE ratio average. And we should learn from this quote from Warren Buffett: "It is far better to buy a wonderful company at a fair price than a fair company at a wonderful price." There you have it, an investing masterclass with Investor Varsity about how we can analyze a stock in 5 minutes using these 5 simple steps.